President Muhammed Buhari on the 31st December 2020 signed the Finance Act 2020 alongside the 2021 Appropriation Act into law. This development reaffirms federal government's commitment to enact fiscal policies annually alongside the passage of the annual budget into law and aligns with global best practices. The act, which took effect on the 1st of January 2021, amended the provisions of 14 tax and fiscal related legislation, such as the Capital Gains Tax Act, Companies Income Tax Act, Companies Income Tax Act, Industrial Development Income Tax Relief Act, Personal Income Tax Act, Tertiary Education Trust Fund Act, Customs and Excise Tariff, and the Value Added Tax Act, Stamp Duties Act, Federal Inland Revenue Service Establishment Act, amongst others. As the 2022 appropriation bill awaits the passage of the National Assembly, President Muhammed Buhari had on December 2nd transmitted to the House of Representatives the 2021 finance bill seeking speedy passage of the bill to support the implementation of the 16.39 trillion naira proposed budget. Now, the bill proposes key reforms to taxation, custom duties, fiscals, and other relevant laws, specifically providing for enhanced domestic revenue mobilization efforts to increase tax, non-tax revenues, tax administration, and legislative drafting reforms, particularly to support the ongoing automation reforms by the Federal Inland Revenue Service. To talk about this, I introduced him earlier. He's a senior manager, Andersen, Nigeria, Mr. Temitope Kolade. Good afternoon, Mr. Kolade. It's good to see you.
Good afternoon, Tulu. Nice to be here.
All right. I would say it's like the second time now we see the Finance Act coming side by side with the appropriation bill. You are a professional in that space. Take us through what you think is the real impact, or what are the positives along as we go on in this discussion. First, take us through what it really means.
Thank you, too, for that question. I think I need to start by saying that it's an impressive position that the government of the day has taken to ensure that at every point in time we have the budgets being pronounced. We also have a Finance Act to support it from a fiscal point of view, which is not very new. We see it done in some other mature economies like the United Kingdom. Right. That's what we've also seen in Nigeria in the last 2 to 3 years now. With the one we're expecting for 2022 would be the third one. And I must say that it's a commendable effort in the sense that what it has done for us as tax practitioners is that it's helped to take away some sort of ambiguities. It's also helped in some respect to ensure that taxes are streamlined. Okay, let me talk about the ambiguity issue. At some point, there used to be a provision in the company's income tax, the Section 19 provision that talks about excess dividend tax. And for a couple of years, companies, taxpayers decided to go to court on that issue because what it meant was that when companies have declared profits and they distribute dividends to other companies, say an holding company, you find that the holding company still has to pay tax on that same dividend. So it's more like double taxation. But with the amendment in the Act, in the Finance Act 2019, that went away. And what that meant was that you had some sort of certainty. And that's one of the things that we see as the basic principle of a good tax system. Certainty is very important. Fairness is very important. Convenience is very important. And efficiency is also very important. So aside that is also the issue with minimum tax. Before now, same provisions of the Companies Income Tax Act, Section 33, used to deal with minimum tax. And you find that companies that have made no revenue in a certain year could end up paying some sort of taxes, even when there is no revenue at all. What the Finance Act then did was to restrict companies that will pay minimum tax to those who have revenue of some sort, and they can pay just a very small percentage of the revenue, even if they have not made profit in that year, which is fairer. So in terms of streamlining things and ensuring that people are able to pay taxes in a way that is more seamless, I would say that yes, we must give kudos to the government for releasing the Finance Act alongside the Appropriation Bill. But let's dig in a bit further and say, what do the numbers tell us? It may be difficult to do a thorough analysis of that, especially given that when this Finance Act came into place, we have also seen the impact of COVID-19. So it's difficult to evaluate what has happened to the numbers. For instance, there has been a decline in collection of taxes by the Federal Inland Revenue Service since 2018. From 2018 to 2019 to 2020, there's been decline over the years. For 2021, we hear that for the first 9 months of the year, the FIRS has been able to collect 4.2 million. And if we prorate that and we say maybe they will continue in along that line for the rest of the year, it means they would have collected 5.6. So that would probably change the trajectory that we have seen over the last 3 years where there's been a decline. But we could say, like I mentioned, that COVID-19 has also been responsible. If you now look at it from the point of collection and what the Finance Act has really done, we could also say that maybe in a way there's been some sort of improvement when you look at tax from value-added tax, for instance, and that's a bit from the introduction of an increased rate from 5% to 7.5%. FIRs will tell you that they've collected more VAT from over 2020 as against 2021. And that could be attributable to that increment. But is that how we should run a tax system? Should we then say the tax rate should be increased? I would say no, definitely. And of course, we've also seen some sort of policy counterfeit too with the passage of the Finance Act. So there is a need to also tread with some serious caution as we continue to see the Finance Act coming alongside with the Appropriation Bill.
Brilliant there. Now, let me follow up with saying that every law, just like the Finance Act, comes with its challenges and, of course, opportunities. Can we highlight some of them, shedding more light on this? Because I know this is also supposed to help to reform public procurement and, of course, state the fiscal responsibility and all of that of government. So tell us some of the challenges and, of course, opportunities here.
Okay, I'll start from the challenges, which is one of the things you've mentioned, fiscal responsibility. As we see for the proposed appropriation bill for 2022, what we see is that we're already exceeding the the proposal by the Fiscal Responsibility Act that says that our debt to service should not be more than 3%. We're seeing it grow to 3.39%, and it gives us some sort of concern. Right. One of the things that the Finance Act should do for us is that it gives us some sort of fiscal adequacy. And what I mean by that is that we are able to see the tax system able to support the revenue budget by the government. And if you look at it in critical terms, in 2020, the revenue target of the government, the federal government, was 8.42 trillion. In 2021, it was 8.1, and in 2022, we're looking at 10.1. In terms of tax collection and actual tax collection over these years, the target has been around 5 million, and then for 2021, it was about 7.9 trillion. But the FIRS was only able to collect 4.95 in 2020. That also tells us that indeed that adequacy is not there. And what is what is causing that? For me, I think it's about increasing the tax base. It's about how many people collect more, how many people earn more. Do people really pay tax in line with what they earn? Right? Tax is meant to be progressive, and that's the only way we can start talking about fiscal adequacy. That's the opportunity that we have with the Finance Act, right? We must turn that challenge to an opportunity that we are not creating a policy somersault. For instance, I'll talk about some of the provisions that you see that have been amended before in the previous Finance Act that we see may want to be amended again in the Finance Bill for 2022. right? You check a section 39 of the company's income tax, where before now, it was almost clear that for a company that is into downstream gas utilization, you can claim some sort of incentives, right? Even under the IDITRA, which is the Industrial Development Act. That's a tax holiday. And then you could also gain some sort of incentive under the Companies Income Tax Act. But that is being reversed in the proposed bill for 2022. And that's not necessarily good for us. And why I say that is because some people may have taken investment decisions. Now, taxes will not come all in a year just because we have released the Finance Act to collect taxes. It's going to be over the years. If we give these companies the ability to settle in and to wrap up their operations, it could be that by the time they are well settled, they are able to also give more to the economy in form of taxes and also providing jobs, because the tax may not necessarily come from the company's angle, but it could come from the income that is paid to the employees of the company. So it's a balance that we need to strike, that even though we have this instrument to collect taxes, we must be careful that we don't stifle investment. We must be careful that we encourage investment such that those investments will then produce revenue that could be taxed.
Now, I was already thinking around the impact on business and incomes and all of that. But it brings me back to the minister also talking about the likes of Amazon collecting VAT from digital companies, you know, and all of that outside the country. Do you think this will help shore up revenue? What is your reaction to that statement?
Interestingly, the position the Nigerian government is taking about Amazon and the likes is not a unilateral one with other governments of the world at the moment. You recall that at some point there was something like a global minimum tax that was being agreed, and Nigeria hasn't signed into that yet, because the OECD led those conversations. And what that is supposed to do is that before you can talk about VAT, for instance, you have to talk about the companies registering in Nigeria, right? Because you don't expect a company that is not registered in Nigeria to collect VAT on your behalf. Now, some of these companies are looking into a situation where you have them aligned with the global way of paying taxes, and there is a global minimum tax that they pay that you then get your share as a government, as a sovereign government from. But I think what the Nigerian government has tried to do at the moment is to take a very nationalistic view to say we have a significant economic presence order, and that provision is also rooted in one of the amendments to the Companies Income Tax Act to ensure that one way or the other, if you are doing some sort of activities and it cuts across Nigeria from the digital economy, you have to pay tax in Nigeria. The question we should ask is how many of them have been tracked down by the FIRS and how many are already paying taxes? I think maybe very few, if any at all. And so it's important to begin to evaluate that, yes, we have these people that should help us. They're doing some business in Nigeria, but have we aligned our policies to what is being done from a global point of view as well? Do we have the instrumentality to be able to collect from them by ourselves without the support of the OECD and the instrument that the OECD is trying to put in place?
Let's now move on to also understand when we talk tax, many of us limit it to the formal space, and many also argue that we need to explore that informal sector, bringing them into the net, and maybe that would also help us increase this. The tax to GDP ratio still stands at about 6%, or how is it calculated? Professionals but you understand what I mean, which is really low. Now, will this, taking advantage of the informal sector, will that help increase this or get it better than what we have at the moment?
Yes, indeed. And that's what I would always want to propose, again, because if you're going to do anything different, it's not by changing the laws year in, year out. It's about having a tax system that has a spread across the population. And that's how we come to the so-called tax to GDP ratio of 6% that has been perpetually about that same rate. Reason because we don't necessarily have to increase tax rates. The question is how many people have the powers to pay tax? How many people are willing to pay tax? Yes, if we pass new laws, if we amend the laws, it gives some more clarity, and then maybe we don't have to go to court on certain issues before we find the taxpayers just paying voluntarily. But more importantly is that how many people have the powers to pay tax? Have we been able to integrate the system such that the information that people have available, maybe to apply for loan in certain organizations, are also available for tax purposes? How have we automated the system such that we are able to collect tax, no matter how small, from everyone? It's a fair share that everyone must pay, such that it's a balance. It's not a case of we have like less than 5% of people in Nigeria paying taxes at all. That's going to be very bad for us, and that's why we have remained so low. So we need to look into the informal sector. We need to look at how we are able to get people to be encouraged not just to do their business, but also to pay some fair share of tax, no matter how small it is. And it's going to contribute, yes, to increasing the tax GDP ratio.
All right, let's wrap up on this note. So what are you expecting? So if we continue this way, what do you think about our budget implementation, our fiscal issues, more revenue issues? What are your thoughts around that?
Thank you very much, Tul, for that question. And I would say that, like I mentioned earlier, fiscal adequacy is very important for us as we go on to look at Finance Act year in, year out. For instance, when I look at the finance bill for 2021 going into 2022, I see an attempt to amend the FRS Establishment Act to ensure that the VAT issues between River State government and some state governments in Nigeria is addressed by the Finance Act. That's a simple and a purely constitutional issue for me. And I don't think that that can be addressed by the instrumentality of the Finance Act. We might be creating more problems, might be creating some sort of policy somersault if we don't tread carefully as we try to use the Finance Act to amend the laws, right? What is then important is that when we look at collection of taxes, we need to look at our issues. Are they simply in the amendments of the laws? I would say not entirely. Most importantly, we need to look at what are the collection tools that we have. Have we tightened the tools such that we know that there are no leakages in the collection in themselves? Have we also automated the process to ensure that we can do an end-to-end check of the collection process? And have we also tried to stimulate the economy to an extent where we have more investment and people are able to afford the tax payments, and they are more interested in voluntary compliance than being enforced to make payments? That's the way I see some radical changes happening to our tax collection in Nigeria.
And finally, again, there was this discussion, or it was all around, even on social media and all of that, talking about the TIN number and the accounts thing coming up again, and everyone got bothered and worried that even those that don't have TIN numbers, you might not even be able to run your accounts. And how do you react to that? I heard that is not in the present bill.
Yeah, interestingly, before now, it's been that if you're running a business, you need that TIN number to open an account to run that business. The question is then how many people use their business accounts, if we want to be sincere to ourselves, for business. Some people, what they do is to use their private accounts for business. And it creates some issues both for the tax administrator and for the taxpayer themselves, because the tax administrator would say, okay, I know you could have done this, so I need your private account as well, and I'm going to look into it, right? What is most important is that for me, I think there needs to be a clear integration of the numbers, right? From our national identity number to passport numbers to all of the numbers, what we find is that when you go to different organizations, the BVN, these numbers are meant to be synchronized, but we don't see it happening really, right? And so we need this action to be taken to ensure that tax collection is more realistic. And I think that it's not out of place for people to really pay their fair share of the income earned. It doesn't matter if you have gotten that money through your personal account or through your business account. What is most important is that if you have earned income that is taxable, you should pay tax on it, and we should be sincere about it. We shouldn't hide our revenues, our personal income from taxes, because that's tax evasion and it's a punishable offense under the law. And so by every means, whatever it's important to do to ensure that taxes are collected from personal income, it should be done. But of course, not intruding into the privacy of people, because we know that certain tax administrators sometimes also want to overstep the boundaries by looking into personal income, gift items, and things that may not necessarily be taxable, and say that they are indeed taxable, all in a bid to overburden taxpayers.
I must thank you so much, Mr. Temitope Kolade, for making this very clear to us. I've been speaking to a senior manager, Andersen, Nigeria. They're speaking around Finance Act and, of course, Appropriation Bill in Nigeria. Thank you so much, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Tolu.